Today's episode is really about shifting from survival mode to sustainable growth.
Making sure that I myself respected my boundaries so that nobody else could really pressure me to give in a way.
What were the early signs of burnout in your career that you initially, ignored?
I don't believe in balance.
And somehow smile through it, and that's like a pressure cooker waiting to explode.
I love that. The pressure cooker waiting to explode. Yes. And for me, wealth and wellness are not separate conversations. People not necessarily having the life, if you will, missing important events and being like 24/7 available type of being available on vacation. And that's why even now I strive to work with leaders. I am not sacrificing my body for the job, for the career.
How does the success script in accounting, silently promote self-neglect?
I don't mind getting paid, but I want to make sure that the work that I'm doing is also in alignment with how I want to show up. Is it easy? Absolutely not. I just can let my body keep going the way that it's going at, right? Like the weight gain and whatnot.
So, what are the pressure points for women like motherhood, leadership roles, and the perfectionist trap? What have been your conversations around that?
You have to work hard. You have to work hard. So when you get into that place, you have the guilt as well of this is what I'm supposed to be doing.
You have been grinding for so many years. You're really working hard. You have set the benchmark so high. And then one fine day, you start realizing that there is a scope for self-care that I need to accommodate in my schedule. So what is that mindset? How do you shift that mindset?
But you also have accounting firms where they don't work the crazy hours, where they literally selective of the client that they work with.
It's like the harder you grind, the more you're respected.
Absolutely. Absolutely. You never really learn to say no. And now you have clients pushing you left and right because you don't have any boundaries, right? And that part of the self-care is also learning how to make sure that people respect your boundaries. And I hate to give this example, like we take better care of our cars, our pets, our plants, but we don't take care of us. Into my 15th year in public accounting with the pandemic.
And that almost feels like a radical shift when you have, built your identity on performance.
Yes. Ooh.
Everyone can be replaced, but not your health. Hi, everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Legendary Podcast. I'm your host, BK, bringing you insightful conversations with some of the sharpest minds in the industry. Today's conversation is deeply personal and powerfully relevant, especially if you have ever felt like your professional success was coming at the cost of your personal well-being. Our guest for today's podcast is Laura Tshilumba. Now, Laura is the founder of Your Now Body and the Women's Wellness and Wealth Institute, and a transformational guide for high-achieving, faith-led women ready to stop striving and start shining in their bodies and their lives. She helps women make peace with the body they are in, the food that raised them, and the season they are living through. Her signature approach blends her training as a certified integrative nutrition health coach and certified health mindset coach with practices rooted in cultural wellness, hormone supportive habits, and nervous system regulation, delivering soulful self care that meets women where they are, but doesn't leave them there. Her work especially resonates with Black women and women of African and Caribbean descent who are done with shrinking their bodies, silencing their needs, and sacrificing themselves to hustle or diet culture. Laura reminds them that the perfect body and right time are myths, and that real wellness begins with alignment, rest, and embodied joy. She's also a CPA with over 20 years in public accounting. Laura now uses her analytical lens to expose the invisible taxes women quietly pay in peace, sleep, and self-worth, just to stay, seen. In a world, self-care isn't a luxury. is a revolution that stops you from burning out just to succeed. Now, Laura, it's such a privilege to have you here. Your story isn't just powerful, it's painfully, relatable for so many in our profession. I think post COVID, especially, the conversation around burnout is no longer optional, it's urgent. Now, today's episode is really about shifting from survival mode to sustainable growth, both professionally and personally. So,
Mhm.
on behalf of the legendary podcast team, I welcome you on this podcast, Laura.
Oh, thank you, BK. I am so happy to be here today with you.
Thank you so much. So, let's just dive in straight into the
Absolutely.
heart of this topic. Tell me about the burnout story. Like, what were the early signs of burnout in your career that you initially, ignored?
Hmm. You know, looking back, I would think that the early signs where me not necessarily have the energy that I needed, not
Hmm.
sleeping enough, just like powering through like the hours, right? And I don't necessarily think that even though I was aware of the signs, early signs of burnout, I also felt powerless in the sense where you have the partners, like everybody on the team literally was doing, what was expected of them as far as like the hours. So I felt like even though it was wrong, there was nothing that I could do for me
Hmm.
to change that without feeling like I will be the outcast in a way. And honestly, all of that also turned into me having pre-diabetes. I just wasn't eating right. And this is my story. It may not necessarily be the typical story of your average like accountant, but that's really what he ended up being of just like neglecting the wellness for the sake of making the billable hours, working the long hours during tax season, even foregoing some of the very important family events. So all those signs were there from the very beginning, but I
Hmm.
just never felt like I had the power to change that. It really took me years into the profession for me to get at a point where I feel like drawing the line.
Yeah. And you know what's striking is how these signs often feel normal in our line of work, right? And it's like exhaustion is seen as a proof of dedication, and it happens with most of us, especially in the accounting space, where we
Mhm.
work in under a lot of pressure, under tight deadlines, and even if we don't show up in office for a day, the work piles up, and there is so much
Exactly.
to review, and a lot revolves around accuracy. So any oversight can lead to a lot of issues with the clients and all.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
So I absolutely agree with how we do not realize, and in the long run, it takes a toll on our body. But then, is there a moment? Is there a particular moment that you could remember that you had to say that, okay, this isn't sustainable anymore?
Oh yeah, and as sad as it sounds, it was really into my 15th year in public accounting with the pandemic. And I think with
Mhm.
the pandemic, with us being at home, one, the realization of being able to do the work that we can do remotely. I was working remote before, but it was really like on a special case type of situation. But
Mhm.
then just taking the pause and really asking myself, is this truly how I still want to shift and move? Right. And at the time, I left one accounting firm to go to the other one. And with that one, because I was new and I was going through those personal changes of me going into what I call now like a healing journey of rediscovering myself, making sure that I myself respected my boundaries so that nobody else could really pressure me to give in a way. I have kind of like decided that this is how I'm going to show up, and this is how we're gonna redefine what it looks like for me to show up in public accounting without the exhaustion, without the rest. Was I still working the long hours? Yes, but I redefining in a different way. Where, for example, for me, there was no longer the crazy Sunday morning of work. Like Sunday became totally like my rest day, and I made it known as well. So it started with doing like small shifts because again, you cannot unlearn what you grew up into. Especially for me, like public accounting was literally my job. Like I started in public accounting right after college. So that's all I've known. And that's what was normalized to me, the long hours and whatnot. So it's really started with like small shifts around the self-care. I'm still making sure that I was progressing the way that I wanted to progress, but without the burnout. And it also looked like to me foregoing the equity partnership routes. For a lot of people, it was kind of like, what are you doing? What is that? But there was really no partner that I could look up to. And I know for people who are gonna watch this later, they're gonna be like, "Oh my God, is that what she thought of us when she was working with us?" But I could see how like the burdens, you know, people not necessarily having the life, if you will, like missing important events and being like 24/7 available type of thing, or being available on vacation. And that's why even now I strive to work with leaders because it really starts from the top. Because when you have like those tax associates, they're looking up to those leaders, and whatever the leader's doing, they are sending down the message. You know what I mean? Where like it's hard to take a time off just because it's hard to even leave the office during the day because your child has a soccer game or recital, because life is still happening outside of work. Yes, work is important, but it's not how we're supposed to be living our life in a way, you know?
Yeah. And do you think in this context, like, how does the success script in accounting, silently promote self-neglect?
Ooh, in many ways. And I've worked with great people, and I don't necessarily think that it's malicious for some of them. It's just
Mhm.
that it's been normalized in the profession. But you also have accounting firms where they don't work the crazy hours, where they literally selective of the client that they work with, right? But you also see on the other side of the spectrum where the partners are so pushy and everybody's worrying about meeting like revenue goals. They pick everybody as a client. The client is rude to your staff and nobody's saying anything because they are the clients and whatnot. So you could also see where like in some firms, the narrative was, I don't know if subconsciously or consciously, was pushed. And even like a simple example, like having lunch and dinner at work during busy season brought in as a way of, we know we have the hours and we're going to make sure that we can compensate for that. And you have people feeling guilty for not staying for dinner at work, but that should not be the norm during
Yeah.
busy season.
It's like the harder you grind, the more you're respected,
Absolutely.
right?
Absolutely.
And
Absolutely.
especially when it comes to women, the
Mhm.
expectations only, multiply because they're
Absolutely.
they're already uh, a mother, their partner,
Mhm.
they're a full-time, mom, and then it's like they should never drop a ball, right? And somehow smile through it, and that's like a pressure cooker waiting to explode.
I love that. The pressure cooker waiting to explode. Yes.
Right.
Yes. Yes.
So I'm sure since you're coaching largely to the providing coaching to the women. So what are the pressure points for women, like motherhood, leadership roles, and the perfectionist trap? What have been your conversations around that?
Ooh. Pretty much everything that you said. And I think for me, not that I want to bring like the race card or the cultural aspect of it, but I grew up in a
Hmm.
culture where excellence was really tied into hard work, right? So you also have that underlying current of you have to work hard, you have to work hard. So when you get into that place, you have the guilt as well of this is what I'm supposed to be doing. And even like, we can even like take away like the balance because I don't believe in balance per se because something is always going to give in. As
Yeah.
like kind of like yes, you're giving 100% of work. The house may not be as tidy as you want it to be, right? Or you may not go to every single event of your children, and there's not necessarily anything wrong with it, but you learn to prioritize. And that priority selection can look different depending on the season you're in. And for me, it's also allowed me to give myself a lot of grace because I've fallen short in many situations. But it's really about how do we integrate life with work. Depending on your employer, we tend to
Mhm.
be like in compartment, in silos, but that's not how life is. You may be in a situation where you're caregiving for all the parents, you have toddlers, or you have a spouse, and the spouse also have like a high demanding job. So how do you integrate all of it? And that's why to me, it's very important to work for an accounting firm with a culture where the people come first. And by that, it doesn't necessarily mean that the work is not going to get done, but it's understanding that we have humans behind the work because life happens, and I've had so many situations where you wake up in the morning, get the kid ready and whatnot, the childcare is closed for whatever reason, like a bad burst or something. And so now you're in that panic mode because you have to
Yeah.
go to work. And if you don't have an understanding job, an understanding leader, it creates the anxiety. And so often it trickles into you not being a good parent, because now you're resentful of your role as a mother and even have the language sometimes of, if I didn't have this, I will be at work. But that's that part of life. How do we make sure like we integrate life into our work?
Right.
Right.
But then, Laura, now, for example, you have been grinding for so many years. You're really working hard. You have set the benchmark so high. And then one fine day, you start realizing that there is a scope for self care that I need to accommodate in my schedule. So, what is that mindset? How do you shift that mindset? You may be the top performer. You will have your own insecurities around your brand image within that network. So, and then you decide, I need to take care of myself. So, how that mindset, shift happens?
For me, it was really because I said earlier I had a type 2 prediabetes. And for me, it was really from I need to get off the medication. I just can let my body keep going the way that it's going at, right? Like the weight gain and whatnot and everything. So for me, it was really the why, the deeper why, to be honest with you, of let's
Mhm.
get to a place where I am not sacrificing my body for the job, for the career. And it started with like walking, like doing like daily walks. And during my walks, I started having like those crazy revelations. And I don't even think they're like, crazy revelations. It's just like I have allowed myself to pause enough to start listening to what I needed. Because the reality is, especially with us like high achieving women, we don't have a knowledge gap. We know what we need to do. You know what I mean? But just
Yeah.
because we know better, we don't always need better. What we have the gap in is the permission, like allowing ourselves to stand into the power of what do I need and how can I meet that need for me? And that can look like having like 15-minute lunch outside of your office, taking the day off, for example, turning off your laptop at the end of the day where you don't feel like you still have like to get back on it like at 10 p.m. after the kids are put to bed like every single night. You know what I mean? So it's really about like those small shifts. And because we are also into the all or nothing type of mentality of if I told myself that I'm going to have a workout of 60 minutes and for whatever reason I only have 20 minutes, the old me would have been like, forget it, I'm not doing this anymore. But now it's like, what can I do with the 20 minutes? Can I do like the bike? Can I do a stepper? Can I walk? Can I dance? So you really, learn, at least for me, I learned to leverage what I have and make time for it. And that's why we live in this fallacy of waiting for the right time, waiting for the kids to grow up, waiting for whatever until I make partner or until I'm promoted to manager. But what are you doing in the now? What are you doing in the meantime? Because truly, the way I start like believing, seeing these things is we are not meant to burn ourselves on our way to success. And for me, wealth and wellness are not separate conversations. They're really one conversation. And hustle culture is going to make you think they're a separate conversation. It's like, burnout on branding, literally, because you have to hustle, you have to grind, you have to work hard. But can we also work from a place of rest? Can we work from a place of peace? And what does that look like to you as an individual? Because what's going to work for Laura may not work for another woman and vice versa. So you really have to get the awareness because, and again, you cannot have self-care without the awareness of self first. You cannot. And that's why sometimes we fail because we live in a times where everybody's expecting to be ended, like, a self-care plan, a meal plan, a workout plan, but does that work for you and with you in mind?
And that almost feels like a radical shift when you have, built your identity on performance.
Yes.
Yes.
Ooh.
Right? But it's such a powerful mindset change, which I think. And having said that, how did when you left the traditional, public accounting space, how did that space, gave you time for that clarity that with which or the conviction with which you are, promoting health and well-being.
Yeah. And honestly, it wasn't until recently that I gave myself I guess, the language that I didn't necessarily had when I left public accounting, because there was also a little bit of grief because public accounting was literally all that I knew as a professional. But to me, now I look at it as it wasn't quitting. It was really about me reclaiming the capacity of still using my gift, but in a setting that did not um, let me burn myself in the process. You know what I mean? And because I've seen people, business owners, like really like wealthy people as clients unraveling behind the scenes, literally, because their health was paying the price to their success. Now I'm radical about it. I'm radical about my health and the way it even shows up in my wellness or my tax practice is in the boundaries that I have with my clients. The pricing, because my pricing is also a boundary because it's not going to attract everybody. You know what I mean? And by making sure that yes, you're gonna have those one-off, if that's life, but by making sure that I set up those boundaries in the way that I attracts clients to me, it also allows me to create a capacity to work in an environment that I can control and show up in the way that I need to. I don't have the crazy hours anymore. Am I making the same amount of money? Not yet, but we're getting there. And it's just like amazing to me, just like the people and the client that I'm attracting. And sometimes because of the background, I feel like I'm finding my niche, but also my niche is finding me. Like I will get on a call with a self-care client and through the talking, we'll realize that, They come to me for self-care, but they also stay for like the tax strategies because then they realize the way that I'm taking care of myself is impacting the way that I'm showing up in the business. It's impacting the way that I'm operating. Kind of like, your wellness is impacting your profitability because people are profitable, but they're
Yeah.
also broke, and how do we work from that place of non-scarcity? Because and again, when you work from a place of, well, you're not sleeping enough, your decision making is impacted. Right. So that's why I'm very radical for like, the self-care as a strategy, not just fluff or like, luxury, something that we can negotiate and whatnot is even if you have to negotiate, you gotta have like a minimum type of bar that even if you were to fall down, because life happens, that even if you would really like to fall, you don't fall so low that you forget yourself.
Absolutely. And I honestly love the idea that you did not quit the field, but you redefined your relationship with it.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah.
And it's
Yeah.
amazing how, giving that distance changes our perspective, giving that
Yeah.
space in between changes our perspective.
Yeah. And you know what, BK? I find myself that I am a better CPA because I'm a coach, and I'm also a better coach because I'm a CPA because I have allowed myself to come into this tax work as a whole, not just like the tax advisor, but also as the woman, the human behind it. And now when I have conversation with people, I hear difference, and I even like circumstances where I will tell the potential client, I don't think this will be a good fit or whatever that you're trying to accomplish based on what you're telling me, it's not going to work. And I can tell, can I walk you through or vice versa because I don't mind getting paid, but I want to make sure that the work that I'm doing is also in alignment with how I want to show up. Is it easy? Absolutely not.
Yeah.
Right? Especially when, we want the money, we want the revenue, we want to be profitable, but I want to do it in a way that I am not selling, sacrificing my wellness along the way. No.
And you're a perfect blend of, you since you have been into the CPA space and you're also a health and well-being coach. And most of the problems or the challenges arise from not managing the financials or the client deliveries stress. And you're able to blend that perfectly and provide a solution. So that kind of, I think, mostly would be resonating with the people you're talking to normally.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Yes,
Right.
yes. And it's different. It feels new to at least like a lot of the clients that I bring, but how can I put it? I help them finally listen to their whole self as well. Because I'm also like a mindset coach, right?
Right.
And
Yeah.
it allows them to put in place like structure that will help them with their cash flow. And again, just how they show up with their businesses, where like, what you may thought was a block in the operations and how you run your business may be tied to like your own money stories that you never really set and unravel or unlearn in a way. You know what I mean? And maybe like the boundaries, you never really learn to say no. And now you have client pushing you left and right because you don't have any boundaries, right? And that part of the self-care is also learning how to make sure that people respect your boundaries.
Yeah, absolutely.
Also, self-care will look different because then again, we have trivialized self-care so much that we don't understand how powerful it is and how unique it is to each individual. Like nutrition, yes, body movement, yes, but it's also about boundaries.
100%. So, do you think high achieving women
Mhm.
mostly struggle when it comes to the self care, taking care of themselves?
Oof. Yes and no. In a sense where we, how can I put it? We are more concerned sometimes with the outward type of self-care. Like, get your nails done, get your hair done, get like look presentable and whatnot. For that part, for a lot of them, they got it checked. But then you what you don't see is like the unseen burden of the weight of, yes, you have all of that, but you're not drinking your water, right? Or
Yeah.
you're not like nourishing your body. And it's nothing worse than being on a diet during busy season where you don't have the proper nutrient, you hungry and angry. Like honestly, I got to a point in my life when I received like a nasty gram, like a nasty email in the afternoon. My first reaction is, did this person eat lunch or something? Because you cannot argue to the brain that is not nourished. You cannot, But yeah, so I think from that perspective, sometimes we struggle with it. And again, it doesn't come from the head knowledge because you need like 7 hours of sleep, whatever you need, 8 hours of sleep. But then you find yourself at bedtime doom scrolling, right? You have that revenge, like procrastination of like sleep revenge because maybe that's the only time of the day where you feel like you're in control of you. Where like during the day, like everybody needed something from you, your boss, your team, your co-workers and whatnot, like the kids, the spouse, and maybe that's the only time that you have. And again, up here that I need to go to bed, but you're not doing it. Right. So there's like a yes and no because like people define self-care however they define it. But for me, it's really about your self-care should not stress you out.
Yeah.
It should rejuvenate you. It should refresh you. And that's where it comes into understanding self. Because if BK, for example, needs to wake up at 5 a.m. and it works for him, it may not work for somebody else who may need to sleep until like 7 o'clock.
Yeah.
So how? Because your personal culture is going to kill the strategies. Yes, people can change, but you need to be rooted in a deeper why. And your why needs to make sense for you. For me, and again, it started with, I don't want to be on medication for type 2 diabetes. And now it's more like, I want to have the energy for my children. I want my children to remember that mom was present. Is it 100% of the time? No, but I also wanted to be able to go on vacation without my laptop, without having to hop on a conference call here and there.
Yeah.
So I think as long as like people can internalize what that self-care looks like for them instead of approaching it from a checklist type of place where we so used to the going that we forget that why are we doing all of these, and it's really for us to still have this body because we only have this one body after the job is done, after we retire, you know, because we are not our job, we are not our title, but we don't always understand that.
And these days, Laura, even I have
Mhm.
experience, like I'm sure you're in that space. So we talk a lot about, burnout, and we talk about burnout like
Mhm.
it's a fire. But most of the time, it's a slow drip that we ignore for too long,
Mhm.
right? And that's where, it takes a toll. And I think at times, it becomes too late for you to even react. And then a lot of other consequences follow that trail.
Yeah, and you raise such a good point. It is very silent. Like it just seeps through, and it's so silent that it becomes part of our new normal. And I said all the time that we have some of us as what we call like ICU body, like intense, like bodies that are intensive care units. And I hate to give this example, like we take better care of our cars, our pets, our plants, but we don't take care of us, right? Because if
Yeah.
you have a car, you don't put the oil when you're supposed to be putting the oil, and the car breaks down, the car will break down in the middle of the road and whatnot, you're going to have it towed. But with the body, it's still gonna keep going, but at what cost? You might have like skin breakouts. You might have like diabetes. You might have high blood pressure. So it will send you signals, but those signals are not always like loud enough for us to sit down. And even when they're loud, we might still brush them aside and say, well, I'll go see the doctor later or whatever the case may be. until you get to a point where you only have the health problem, but because you have the health problem, you have a lot of problems going on, right? So why can't we
Yeah.
then start from a place of instead of using self-care as a crutch or like an emergency type of rescue that's kind of like, reel us back from the ledge, why can we not use it as a maintenance for like every single day? And every day is going to look different from one individual to the next. And even for yourself, one day you may just be like, you know what? Can I rearrange my schedule so that I can have a nap today? Can I rearrange my schedule today so maybe I can touch Christ? So whatever. Like you have to find you because BK, the thing that we don't realize is, God forbid, if something were to happen to you, the job is gonna find somebody else to replace you. That's the reality. And we know that. I'm not saying be lazy. I'm not saying don't do your job. Yes, you have to do your job. Yes, you still have roles and responsibilities, but don't do it to the expense of you. So self-care
100%.
should not be like that 911 type of call, And it's really sad because when life gets busy, the first thing that we throw out of the window is self-care, even though it is that one thing that we need in order for us not to go on the other side of the ledge, you
Yeah.
know?
That's so powerful, Laura. Everyone can be replaced, but not your health.
We cannot. And we know that. We do.
Yeah,
We do.
absolutely. Yes. We don't do anything
We
about
do. We do. Yeah, we
it.
do.
Right. So, when it comes to your coaching style, and
Mhm, mhm,
when there are CPAs who are approaching you for health and well-being, like,
mhm.
what's your style? How do you approach that?
Whew. So the way I typically like approach it is really kind of like assessing where the person is. And people are different, but I typically like ask questions, right? And it's more like conversational. It's not like interview type of things. It's me also like understanding what I've known through my coaching certification, like your circles of life in a way. Like, what does work look like? Because, and again, like, for example, I'm going to give you this where somebody may come to me and say, I don't have time to work out, right? And I know we all have like 24 hours, but the reality is we don't have the same 24 hours. Some people have support. Some people may have parents living in town with them where they might be getting the grandkids and whatnot. And some people just don't have the support. And then when I ask questions about like, how is their work life structure, you start like seeing holes, but they can't see those holes because they see all the time. Like I had a lady where she does not delegate, and I'm like,
Mhm.
well, that's one of the reasons why, where like you during the day, you are doing kind of like everybody has job, and then you have to do your job after work hours, but like catch up and things like that. So where are you gonna find the time? So can we get comfortable around delegation? And how does that look like to you? Because she's been burned in the past by delegating, so she didn't trust her team. So it's like, okay, why are we hiring these people if you're not gonna trust them at all? So it's really
Right.
about like understanding, like your circles of life, your work life, like your social life, like your eating patterns. And it takes a while because none of this is gonna get like uncovered like on day one. And that's why I like to set the expectation from the very beginning because we live in a microwavable society where people expect like results right away. We're like, okay, I want this to be part of my self-care, but I'm also like looking to lose the weight. I'm like, I always tell people I'm not a weight loss coach, but it can be a side effect for those who want it because now that you're taking care of yourself, your body is also releasing the weight that it doesn't need to leach onto because you're just taking care of it like the way that you need to take care of it. But to answer your question, it really comes down to understanding where they are in their lives, what else is going on in their womanhood journey, if they're in a way. Like if we are parents, you have toddler, your self-care plan is going to look different with somebody who's
Yeah.
like an empty nester because you just don't have like the same type of capacity. It's really about like creating capacity for you outside of work, outside of being a mom, a wife, a friend, and things like that.
So in a way, you are both empathetic and analytical at the same time.
At the same time, because I'm very like I'm provide like the empathy comes into understanding where you are, and then I think the accounting side also come with the structure, because we need
Yeah.
structure, we need the accountability, and I have like different tools that we use because we you cannot you cannot really have progress on what you cannot measure. So how are we measuring what it is that we need to see, right? So that's where we like the accounting comes into play because we gotta look at some data. We gotta look at metrics, right? Like if it's like we want to change, for example, like our sleep pattern, like what do we put in place to make sure like we're tracking that, like our nutrition, now we're talking about like calories or whatever it is that's gonna look like to you. We got to have metrics. If your goal is to work like, 3 times a week, how are we going to make sure like that happens? And how are we going to hold yourself accountable so that at the end of the
Yeah.
week, if we only did like twice or like once, what's the story behind it? And it doesn't come with judgment. It's really about understanding because what I really tell my client to is life happens. But if you don't um have systems to allow you to put in place what you need for your goals, you are never going to reach your goals. And one of my book that I love and always recommend is Atomic Habits by James Clear. Is he has a quote that stayed with me, and I read that book during the pandemic when I was going to my own healing journey. You don't rise up to the level of your goals. You fall down to the levels of your system. So if your goal is to eat healthy, but you're not cooking or you're not taking like or you're not ordering like the food that you know you have to eat, and then you really just like leaving it up to you and whatnot, you're going to eat whatever is available. And that may
Yeah.
not necessarily be what you need to eat. And food decision fatigue is a real thing, right? Like, and again, you put yourself in a place where you're not eating what you want, you're eating anyhow, you're eating very fast. How does it show up? How is it showing up when in your business? How is it showing up at your job? So I think it's also like that relationship that we miss along the way. And I said it earlier, for me, wellness and wealth are not two separate conversations. They're really in one, but we live in a world where they want to make us think that it's different because in my mind it's like you cannot have wealth without the wellness because what does it really matter of you having all the money if you're not healthy?
Absolutely, Laura. I
Wow.
agree. Yeah. Let us spend a few minutes on the organizational impact and cultural change. Like
Okay.
you mentioned about one of your, one of the lady who approached you. She was not delegating her work.
Yes. Yeah.
So, and I'm sure there are a lot of people out there, especially in the accounting space, who are not
Correct.
doing it,
Yeah.
right? So, what kind of leaders often come to you or often overlook when it comes to burnout? Are there any leadership styles that fall in this category, or in general, it impacts everyone at the leadership position?
It's really everyone in the leadership positions, but the one that I've seen, that is the one who came my way, they're typically above like the senior manager type of role. Like they have key roles into the organization. And those are the one that I really love working with because they are typically in a team setting where people are looking up to them. And especially like the youngsters or the one who are getting into public accounting, and the underlying message across the board is either the leader himself is a very like high top performer or they're working with high top performers, and the leader has a story of their work hard. And again, I'm working with people from like African descent or Caribbean descent where they work hard to get to where they are. So they believe kind of like people have to kind of do the same, but people
Yeah.
don't have to do the same. So what ends up happening in the process is they over rely on the top performers. And because they over rely on the top performers, those top performers tend to burn up more because everybody's fighting over scheduling to get them projects. So they don't always have like the break that your low performing quote unquote may have because they are the one that carrying like the billable hours load on the big project. Is like how can we then put in place for themselves and also the team of investing into recovery type of systems, right? So the self-care is not only for them, but also for the team. And sometimes trying to get more into like facilitating workshop and organization where like wellness is not just seen like as a perk, but it's really a cultural shift and a strategy for the teams to understand that without the wellness key, you may be losing your top performers. And that's typically what happened. People like quitting, not because they're not happy with the compensation or whatnot, but because they're burned out and they want to go somewhere else. Like I've seen it where people will even go from one job to the next where they may not be getting the compensation, but they have less hours. The tax season looks a little bit different. So the type of project they're in looks a little bit different. So the leaders that I work with that typically the ones that are in charge of teams, and we want to make sure like they understand self-care. And BK, sometimes it's just like a little thing of don't respond while you're on vacation. Who's gonna die? You're not a surgeon or something, and the world is just gonna be fine when you come back. And yes, you're gonna have those because it's their first time. They don't know how to act. Then it's like, okay, we can't go from 0 to 100, right? So maybe you can check your email like once a day because that's what you used to, and that's what's gonna give you the peace because you're not checking. Now it's giving you angst. It's not self-care anymore. So how can we still meet you where you are, but you're also learning along the way? And sometimes people come back and say, I didn't even look at my phone. I came back. The team that I didn't trust handled things while I was away. So what does that teach you? Does that resonate?
Absolutely, absolutely. I just love this example of yours, and nobody is dying for sure.
Nobody's dying.
Right.
Nobody's dying. Yeah. So I think to me it's really important to leverage wellness, not just as a perk, but really, and let's not make it just like, the talk where, yes, we have like Mondays, like mindfulness at work where people get together like in a room. Yes, that's good. But are we giving like paid maternity leave, for example? Are we allowing people to take their time off without having them requesting like a month or 3 weeks in advance? Yes, understanding deadline will always be deadlines, but I've also come from a place where I literally had a deadline every 15th of the month. So you also can be functioning that way because you had like fiscal year clients, you have client overseas, and it's just different deadlines, right? It's not just like your typical April 15 deadline. Even with the April 15, for some, it's not even like a big deadline. It's like it's September, it's October, it's December. It's like, so it's in the little things, and the leadership really has to embody that, especially for those who are walking into accounting who feel like they may be powerless. But that's why, in a way, I'm also glad that we have like the newer generations who are saying no to a lot of these things. They're very big on their mental health as well. So hopefully we're going to see more conversations around like self-care and a bigger shift, if you will. But it starts with a leader, to be honest with you. It starts with a leader. Like I know I'm kind of like, rambling, but I can still remember when I told myself that I would not work on Sunday. And even though I was in the senior manager role, I could literally feel when the partner expects you to work on Sunday and you say, I'm not working on Sunday. It was as if you asked them for like an extra week of PTO or like the world was like crumbling or something. But that was to me, and it cost me in a way where like, you're not a team player, but that was my hard deadline. And I was even joking I can work 80 hours a week if you want to, but I'm not working on Sunday. So you're still gonna have some pushback for some of the just being like a human, having like the boundaries that you want. But if you don't have a leader who understand that, that can have some, consequences. You know what I mean? Like I'm okay with you working on Sunday. You do you. If that's your catch up day, that's fine. But don't expect the same from me. And it's okay for you to honor that as well. So it stopped really with the
Absolutely.
fears. Yeah.
And this leads to my another thought that has been popping up in my mind is like,
Yeah.
what suggestions you would give to organizations and leaders who are working on the policies regarding they need not be reactive, they need to be proactive when it comes to health and wellness, especially in the times that we are living with the deadline pressure and a lot of revolving issues around it that multiplies our stress. So what suggestions you would give?
So for me, it's also one being open, right? Because sometimes what you'll find is the leaders relying on outdated like resources, one, and being open to bringing people like myself or people who truly understand how revolutionary self-care can have on shifting the culture of an organization so that I can come in, help you really like working with the human resource people and whatnot, understand like the processes because sometimes and again there's like small shifts that can happen like how is even like your scheduling and in things where you might not even think because for you wellness you only just look at it as like an HR benefit or like an HR perk, right? It's like okay, how can we work together to put in place policies that are truly policies that can be lived out from the top down, from the bottom up, to make sure that our people are truly living self-care in a way that it's also improving their performance. Because believing or not, when you have an employee who's well mentally, physically, spiritually, they will show up. They will show up. And it's going to impact your bottom
Absolutely.
line as well.
Wow. I mean, I loved every bit of this conversation, Laura. And now, I mean,
To be
I and it was so insightful and at the same time enlightening. And I have been into similar situations where I have been burning out, and when my colleagues identify this, and they point out that it's
Oh,
not,
wow.
you need to take a break,
Yeah.
and they can clearly identify from the my body language,
Yeah.
my the output that I'm generating. And then,
Mhm.
that time I realized, okay, wait, pause, and you need to rethink your schedule or do whatever it takes, take a break, and then come back. And it really helps. A small pause, even if you're going back to that same grind, but a small pause, self-talk, gives a lot of
Yeah.
motivation, and it keeps you, awake when you're slightly getting inclined towards this burnout thing.
Mhm. And thank you for good coworkers, right? And what I've
Yeah, absolutely.
realized too is we tend to see it when somebody else is burning out as opposed to seeing it in us sometimes. You know what I mean? And
100%.
but
Yeah.
because we recognize the signs, but we don't always give ourselves like the same medicine in a way. It's easier for us to give advice, and I say it all the time. Typically, when I'm giving somebody an advice, it's the same advice that I myself need to hear sometimes.
Yeah, 100%. Yes. Very easy to see
Yeah.
what others are doing
Yeah.
or going through, but
Yeah.
we ignore
Yeah.
that part.
hmm Yes.
Right, Laura. So moving to the last section of our podcast, it's the rapid
Okay.
fire round.
Already? Oh my
Yeah.
goodness. I didn't realize that we're already like toward the end.
Right. So are you ready?
I think so. Yes.
Awesome. All right. Here's the first one. What's one wellness myth you want to debunk forever?
That self-care is expensive or it is indulgent. It's really not. Like you really want like burnout is way more expensive.
Right. Imagine you're looking at a billboard and
Mhm.
there you have one slogan around health and well-being. What would it be?
It will be like a hustle culture is a branded burnout. It
Good
is.
one. What's your favorite guilty pleasure that's actually part of your self care?
Ooh. Right now it's plantain. I think I can have plantain for breakfast, snack, lunch, dinner, and everything in between.
Right. If you
Mhm.
could ban one phrase from the workplace forever, what would it be?
Can you just dot dot dot? Because you know whatever's coming after that just is not a 30-second task, is not a 1 minute task. It's something that will require your time, your efforts, your resources, something. So every time, and maybe it's a trauma response, I don't know. Every time I hear, can you just, I know there's something they come for. Like my body's bracing for the what is coming. So let's just spend that.
Right. One thing you wish every young CPA knew on day one.
Ooh, you are not your title. You are not your billable hours.
Great analogy. What's your personal power song when you need to reset?
I have so many right now. It's I don't know if you know the song Jerusalema. It's by Master KG, a South African artist.
Okay.
Hopefully my Congolese people are not going to disown me after this.
I can remember one more that could be in your playlist. I'm not
What?
sure. Girl on Fire by Alicia Keys.
Oh, yes, it is. This girl is on fire. It's one of my yes, yes, yes. Even like Andrea Day, I think that's her name. Like we rise up, we rise
Yeah.
up again. I can't sing, but yes, you get the gist.
Right. What would you rather take? Would you rather take a solo spa day or a weekend getaway with your best friend?
Give me the solo spy day all day and please don't call me. Yes.
And one last question. Who inspires you outside the world of accounting?
Whew. I feel like these questions brings different people depending on where I am in my life. Right now, it's my fitness trainer because she's been with me through the different body seasons, I guess, of motherhood. And she's very disciplined. Like sometimes I have to ask myself, how can somebody be this disciplined? So she's really an inspiration to me to the point where a lot of what I do with myself and with my wellness is because of the work that I do with her as well. So in this season, it's my fitness trainer. Yes.
Awesome. Awesome. So you don't have to find inspiration in some mm, popular personality or by reading books. You have it right.
I have
Then
it right,
answer.
yes. Although I read a lot of books and I look up to a lot of celebrities, but I also have people in my own village in a way that I can look up to and who have a deeper impact on me personally, but also on the work that I'm doing on a daily basis with other people, other
It's a
women.
blessing, honestly.
It is, it is, it is. Because sometimes with the celebrities, like, I don't know, like, sometimes they make you feel like it's unattainable what they do or what they are. You know what I mean? And we don't always have like the chauffeurs, like the chefs and the nannies and whatnot. You know what I mean? We are regular people for some of us, you know?
Yeah, they have the resources to get them there.
Yep, 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 yep.
But still, I guess there is some kind of a drive that, it's pushing them. So
Yes.
in a way,
Yes.
that's inspiring.
Mm-hmm.
Right, Laura. So coming to the end,
Yep.
honestly, I just loved our conversation. And this conversation was so grounding. You've
Thank
taken years of experience and turned it into a blueprint for longevity and not just success. I think our listeners, especially women in finance, needed this.
you. Yeah.
Right.
Yes.
And what
Yes. Yes.
stayed with me is your message that we don't have to earn rest and that being well is a strategy, not a luxury. So thank you
Exactly.
for bringing so much wisdom and realness to this space. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you, BK.
Thank you.